Good evening. This is the smoking section, and I'm very happy to have Vic Rucinski on tonight. Vic, this is your second time.
It is indeed. I'd like to thank you again for having me on, Steve. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Vic, the last time, this is a show that's pretty much related to tobacco issues. So I stick to tobacco issues. And I think tobacco issues have a lot of ramifications, particularly in terms of, let's say, government restrictions, even censorship questions, tax questions, all kinds of things.
Yes.
So it does kind of seep, or what you might say is, kind of run into other issues.
Absolutely.
And I know that you are very politically minded.
I try to be aware.
Do you ever think you're sometimes maybe too aware and you might be getting yourself a little too wound up?
I find that is definitely a symptom when not everybody is as passionate as you are in a certain topic. Then you find a little frustration when things go over people's heads, or
Right. Well, we've talked about Bernie Sanders before, and one thing that Bernie Sanders, I wish I had emailed you some questions that I was going to ask you to prepare you for the show, but
I'm good on my feet. I mean, if you want to tango a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit though that I have a little advantage over you, I think, and that is that I have snus. I'm using snus.
Oh, really?
Yes. Have you ever tried snus?
I like the gum, actually.
Oh, you mean like nicotine replacement gum?
Yeah, nicotine replacement gum. It's I've been on and off that for probably the last 4 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you want to try a little bit of snus?
Sure.
This is Swedish snus, and I guess people can't really see it. I bought it at Levitt and Pierce.
A fine establishment.
And it takes a little getting used to, but like for example, when I perform at open mics, or when I do my show, I always have snus, and I think it helps me concentrate and helps me get a little bit. I mean, I realize I'm very quick on my feet anyway, but this this makes me like an overwhelming force, so to speak. Well, I don't know. I'm kidding, but it gives you that little edge.
Yeah.
I think.
No, I know of the essence of which you speak.
Did you realize that, for example, the World Anti-Doping Organization is concerned about nicotine and tobacco use?
Really?
Because I guess athletes do get. I mean, it's not like the edge you get, I don't suppose, from all kinds of pharmaceuticals, but it does make you a little bit sharper. I think helps a little bit with ADD and that sort of thing.
Well, Einstein himself said that he liked to keep his mind sharp by having some coffee and a smoke here and there.
And well, he was a pretty heavy smoker, I think.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever used this?
No, not snus. I've done the dip, I've done the cigarettes, and I've done the gum.
What about cigars and pipes?
Yes,
You've done that also.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so basically, you take this and you put it.
You tuck it in?
You're right over here.
Okay, that's like the gum.
I think if you go too far back, sometimes you can get the hiccups.
Okay, the gum does the same thing.
But I think this will be better. I mean, the gum. I don't know the gum, but that makes you feel a little bit like sharper, or a little bit less anxious when you chew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nicotine, but that's a pharmaceutical, so I'm kind of not kindly disposed to it. I mean, I don't know. It's like a nicotine extract, and
apparently these days they're able to extract any sort of chemical compound out of any plant. I mean, I don't know if you've ever actually seen the medicines that medical marijuana is dispensed in, but there's this particular brand called Marinol.
Oh, right.
And it looks like one of those, like Advil nighttime gel caps.
Yeah.
Except it's a little ball, and the different colors of them denote the actual, strength of the marijuana extract, but that's supposedly a laboratory extracted pure form of it. So
right, but I come from a kind of a natural background, and for example, in Western science, you always try to analyze everything and pull it apart and say this is the active ingredient, and this we can discard, and we'll get rid of the calories but keep this, or we'll get rid of the caffeine, or we'll get rid of the tar and keep the nicotine. So I kind of like going towards the more primitive,
The holistic approach.
Yes.
I actually prefer that as well.
and they're all, that's like the whole thing about vitamins.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that it's best to find where the vitamins exist in nature and consume that, as opposed to buying all of these multivitamin packs.
Yes.
And they've done studies where the majority of that stuff actually goes right out through your urine. They've done
It
studies
probably,
where
if you're
people
lucky,
eat
if you're
it.
lucky, it goes out through you.
Yeah,
If you're
and-
not so lucky.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's all kinds of, like micronutrients and micro. So I think, tobacco is the most revered plant in the world, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, historically speaking, you've got tobacco and you've got marijuana.
Right, but I don't, certainly in the New World, I don't, certainly in North America, marijuana was not revered like tobacco was. I mean, North American Indian, and I don't even think the South American, I don't know about the South American Indian and marijuana, but I know that in North America, at the time of Columbus, tobacco was the most widely distributed plant.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that.
And
Well, then down through Central America, you have the coca plant, and then you also have the mate plant, or the yerba plant, where they make the yerba mate.
but you still have tobacco in
Yeah.
Central America and in South
This is
America.
true.
And I don't
think
know if
marijuana's
marijuana is
endemic.
held in such high esteem.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think.
haven't heard of it.
I don't know. I would say that you're probably right, because I don't know if marijuana existed in the New World before it got brought over.
In the New World?
Yeah.
You mean from the Old World?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I don't know.
Did you know earthworms
Oh,
were
don't
brought
tell me.
over to the east coast of the United States? They never existed until the 1600s,
Wow. That is very interesting.
changing the ecology substantially. So when people
Right.
say we need to go back to older times, they don't realize how far back they really mean. If they really want to go back to, back when it was just the Native Americans, you got to take the horses away.
Yeah,
You got to take the earthworms away.
Really? Yeah.
Apparently the marijuana, if that's the case.
I don't know.
all of
That's
these
very
things,
interesting.
yeah.
I mean, have you read about the origin of marijuana? I thought, because there are
I do know that there's been excavations done, specifically I think on the Silk Road in China, where they found like an 8,000 or 9,000 year old mummy, and it had a satchel of
Interesting.
more primitive strength marijuana, because obviously over the last 100 years it's been selectively bred to become much stronger than it used to be. But
Well, so my point, I guess I can't, now I've gotten off my point. What was my point? Do you have any idea?
Well, we were talking about the snus and the natural. And,
Oh, right.
know.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, you have this plant that was the most revered. At least I mean, I don't know about marijuana beans, but I don't want to get into an argument about marijuana,
We don't need to talk about marijuana.
because I just don't. I try to stick to tobacco.
One plant at a time.
Yeah, one plant at a time. One plant is certainly enough. And I know that you were a big Bernie supporter and still are a Bernie supporter, so I don't want to get into the Bernie Hillary business. But, one thing that disappointed us smokers and us smokers' rights activists is that for some reason Bernie said that a tax on soda would be a regressive tax, but that a tax on tobacco isn't regressive. I mean, he could have just been mistaken there. I mean, obviously nobody can know everything about everything. Would you disagree with Bernie about that? I mean, because lower income people and people with mental disabilities smoke at much, much higher rates than affluent Americans. And
The same could be said of the nutrition, which would be low quality.
well, there's no question.
Yeah, so
There's
I
no
would
question.
totally disagree.
Oh, really?
With that
Yeah.
assertion. Yeah.
There's no question that, lower income people drink more soda than upper income people.
Absolutely.
I wasn't talking about whether or not it was a good idea or a bad idea. I was talking about whether it's
If it's
regressive.
factual, yeah.
If it's regressive.
Yeah.
But, so, I mean, just on that, would you say the tax on, the tax on a package of cigarettes here in Massachusetts, all totaled, is $5.50? And even people in the field of public health have said that that this tax, especially if you posit that tobacco is some kind of terribly addictive substance, so you have these lower income people who are supposedly terribly addicted to this substance, and they've been inveigled into smoking by the evil tobacco companies, and then you throw a tax on it. I mean, it makes it it makes it not only regressive but kind of insidious. Would you disagree with that?
I would I would reserve saying insidious until I actually saw an accountability of where the tax money is going. Of
Well,
which
tax
I
money.
have no idea where it goes or how it gets.
Let's say it's
distributed.
used. Let's say it's used to pave roads, fund pre-K education, do research on HIV, pay the salaries of government bureaucrats. I mean, let's just say that's what it is, because that's actually what it is. It goes into the general fund.
Okay, it goes into the general fund. I wasn't
Right.
sure if they had set up a special particular,
No. No.
we'll use this money to, I don't know, help underprivileged communities in particular or some sort of...
Well, they use the money for all the things that government uses.
Yeah, okay.
So, but my question is, should smokers pay, should they pay that high a tax? I mean, shouldn't these, if you're going to pave the roads and you're going to fund pre-K education, shouldn't that be paid for by the general public who uses that money? I mean, uses those programs.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I would say that's not a flawed argument. I mean, I personally believe that, no man is an island. And therefore, we should all be expected to help out in maintaining the greater good, whether we directly benefit from it or not, because that greater good has allowed us to, be here and now and be in a relatively safe place, all of these things that is the general cost of society. Now,
I would agree with that.
And now, singling smokers out and giving an exorbitant tax on the product in order to try and, say, well, we'll tax it heavily so people are less likely to want
Right.
to get it. I think that makes about as much sense as choosing to take, what are now considered to be illegal drugs and approach them as a criminal issue, and by saying, well, if we make it illegal, people won't do it, as opposed to treating it as a public health and mental health issue.
Well, I mean, for example, President Obama in his last budget suggested that the federal cigarette tax be doubled from $1.01 to, I guess, $2.02, I guess, to pay for universal pre-K education. I mean, I don't understand why only smokers would pay for pre-K education when presumably it will help a lot of people all over the country.
That smells almost like a shame/vice tax, like where if they charged charged a crazy tax on porno to make you less incentivized to buy it, but the tax on it is going to whatever. I would say that they should reorganize the general tax structure instead of picking out particular groups of people.
Well, right, but in this case, it's particularly smokers. So, and last time you were on the program, you said that Australia had put some kind of law into effect where anybody born after a certain date.
Yes.
Now, I'm not sure you're correct about that, by the way.
Oh, okay.
But given that, you don't think that you believe then that would, in effect, do you want to explain what that was?
Yeah, I mean, if I recall correctly, which I may be recalling incorrectly.
Well, it's been bandied about. I don't think it's been implemented in.
Yeah, it is the idea of picking a certain date, and right now, let's say that date would be 2005. And so anybody born after the date of 2005
Right.
would be unable to purchase and use tobacco products.
Right. So that would eventually, and then presumably eventually all the tobacco companies would go out of business and the farmers would go out of business, and you would probably make it illegal to possess tobacco or to grow tobacco or buy or sell tobacco.
I almost feel like, I guess, and this would be a very unreasonable amendment to that law, but to push the smoking age a little bit further up the chain, and into the 30s.
Right, okay. Oh, so in other words, you'd have to be 30 years old.
Yeah.
Now, what about alcohol? Would you keep it at 21?
I honestly think that the drinking age in this country should be 18.
Okay, but not the tobacco age.
That's a good question. I mean, they're both seen as vices by some people and extremely enjoyable on the other hand. Some people abuse them, other people use them responsibly. I mean,
You're talking about tobacco.
I'm talking about both tobacco and alcohol.
Right, yeah.
And just general other, caffeine to that extent. And so it's a question of how much of the nanny state do you really want?
Well, I mean, and I'm asking you.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you vis-a-vis tobacco, because right now before the Massachusetts legislature is a law that would prohibit someone who goes and serves in Iraq and Afghanistan who is married, who has children, who owns a home, who can vote for the president but cannot buy a cigarette. I mean, do you think that's going too far?
I would prefer to see it done another way. But I don't know what that way is, to be honest with you.
Well, why are you so, okay, but I mean, isn't there such a thing as liberty and freedom, or are we only free and have liberty to do the things that are approved of?
Well, you have the liberty to pursue your own personal happiness and freedom, but you're also, according to the laws of this country, unable to then impinge on others' freedoms.
And by buying cigarettes, how does an 18-year-old, impinge on other people's freedoms?
I guess he's not really impinging on other people's freedoms, but what you do get in that case is, I completely lost my train of thought. Sorry, can you repeat
This
that?
isn't helping? This isn't helping?
I think it might be helping a little too much.
Oh, really? Why?
No, I'm kidding. No, it's fine. It's actually very enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. Thank you.
It takes a while to get used to it.
Yeah.
It really does.
I mean, it's
take a while
really
to get...
similar to the gum, so.
Well, we've got a call, and I have to admit, this is probably one of my pals, okay?
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's see how the audio is. You're on the smoking section. Well, no, he wasn't. Oh, no, that's... Wait.
Now you're on, I think.
You're on the smoking section, I hope.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Oh, here is my friend Jim, who is not...
I agree about the caffeine. Like, people do abuse the caffeine, and doctors say so much caffeine isn't really good for you.
Right.
I mean, but I do drink a lot more caffeine than I think I should, but I do it. I like the feeling of it. I like the taste of it. And you got a point. I mean, cigarettes can be a vice just like caffeine.
Well, the only thing is that the medical establishment, the public health establishment, and the government say that even one cigarette a year is abusing cigarettes. That's the problem, And would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't.
So I can smoke a cigarette a year even if I'm born after 2005?
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Jim?
What? Just a cigarette a year?
Well, my point is...
Like my saying is, it's not the amount that you do, it's what it does to you.
Right.
I mean, just like alcohol. I mean, it's not the amount that you drink, it's what it does to you when you do drink.
Yeah.
Just like smoking. If you have a cigarette, some people have a cigarette once a year, and they might cough a lot.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Feel good from it. But some people might smoke that cigarette once a year and not have any effect.
Right. So how far should the government go to guide us, let's say? I'd like to, Vic, would you? And
the individual.
Let's ask Vic.
Well, I think that there should be, common guidelines, regulations to make sure that these products aren't tainted to begin with. I think that's a good idea. You don't want to be smoking, bad stale tobacco. So I think there should be some general guidelines, but I would always love to see more public education so people know what they're doing, and then let the people do what they want to do.
And what do you think? What do you think, Jim? Would you agree with Vic?
I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think Massachusetts should raise the age to purchase tobacco to 21?
No. I think it should be the same. I don't even know what the age is for drinking. What is that?
21. The age for drinking is 21. It was raised about...
It's the same thing as drinking.
Well, that's 21.
21.
Okay. Jim, thanks for calling. Thanks for calling. So, Jim, I don't know. Let's see how we go here. Jim, he's not... I thought one of my Cambridge citizens for smokers' rights. But Jim is a longtime viewer and a long time he likes to argue with me. Okay. On to the next subject, which is basically the same. How far does the government go? Right now, in about 80 countries, they have what's called plain packaging. That means the cigarette company not only cannot have an attractive package, the government picks a color, and the color is picked by what is the most unappealing color they can find. And they put horrible photos on the package, and this is a quote from an op-ed in the New York Times, very much in
Which I did read.
Oh, you read that op-ed?
I did right before I came.
Well, how did you know to read that op-ed?
Because you had emailed me a few weeks ago a link to it, asking me my opinion.
Oh, okay, really? I did.
Yeah, you did.
But you didn't respond by
I
email.
did. Yeah, I didn't respond by email.
Well, in some of these photos are, and this is a quote from the article, blobs of tumor, diseased heart muscles, and rotted toes. Do you see my toes there? I mean, they're dirty, but they're not rotted.
It looks like a pretty decent foot.
A
Healthy human foot.
It might be dirty, but it's
Sure.
and the nails might be pedicure, but haunting pictures of young cancer patients on their deathbeds. End of quote. I mean, is this a form of censorship?
I am not opposed to plain packaging in the sense of you walk into the store, each manufacturer gets to pick their own color, and you have the rated grades, but they all generally have the same plain text. But putting unappealing colors and pictures of diseased lungs and things like that, I think that does go a step too far.
Right.
I do think that it was a good thing to get rid of the Marlboro Man and Joe Camel and these kind of cartoon characters.
Right.
Because, let's be honest, tobacco is a business, and it's a very profitable business.
Yes.
And you need to continue to increase profits. You have to increase your user base.
Well, you have to keep your user base.
And keep your user base, yeah. And
But that goes for Audio Lab, and that goes for milk, and that goes for automobiles. You have to keep your user base because your user base is constantly dying off.
this is true, especially
No, I don't think especially tobacco. Every user base is dying off.
Yeah.
So you've got to constantly.
Yeah, but
make your
I would
product
prefer that it is a young adult walking into a store and saying, I want to smoke a pack of cigarettes because I want to try it out, as opposed to somebody younger being swayed by fancy packaging or cartoon characters or things of that nature.
Yeah, that's a reasonable argument. Well, listen, that's all we have to say. By the way, Vic is from Audio Lab, one of the best stores in Cambridge.
Thank you very much, Steve. We appreciate